The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. What an interesting day today was in the email box. I'm not sure what happened. Not sure where all this is coming from, but a lot of anti-vax, a lot of anti-mask, a lot of the trucker convoy stuff must have hit a nerve somewhere over the last couple of days, where the loony birds are flying, well, at low altitude. And it came out in the box today, and there was a bunch of stuff that, there seemed to be a common thread. So it seems, I'm thinking it was organized because, look, this is what they do. They find a particular subject and they all hit their talking points. And look, the right does this masterfully. And, because I talked about the trucker convoy a little bit the other day, of which, I'm saying, look, at the end of the day, okay, you're against the mandates. Fine. You've had your voice. You've done that. You're the minority up there. They're going to deal with it. They're going to figure it out. They're doing their protest, and what will come out of that will come. However, the Canadian government's going to deal with that. That's what I said. I believe in the right to protest. If you're not happy with your government, you have the right to redress of your grievances. You don't, however, have the right to do the other things. The destruction of stuff, the harassment, that stuff, that problematic, and stuff that the right would be losing their mind over. And in fact, there are states across this country that when the Black Lives Matter protests were going on and people were blocking highways, they were like, we should just run them down. And I said at the time, I'm not in favor of blocking highways. I'm not in favor of doing that because of the public safety part of this. And I think people should be able to get to and from where they're going. But they've actually passed laws that, if you could run people over now, because that's the fetish on the right. It's their freedom. And that was the common theme again today. And what I find interesting about people who talk about freedom is how little they understand what it actually is. The louder they speak, the more times they say it, the less they actually get it. What they're talking about is their freedom. Their freedom to do whatever they want to, whoever they want, however they want, whenever they want, wherever they want. And nobody else has any other right. And this is part of this. In watching the Fox News crowd jump on board of the trucker convoy, who these people don't give a tinker's damn about, other than ideologically, they're doing something we like, which is tearing down, quote unquote, liberal government and going after those liberal tiers. Understand, these are the people who were, these are the people who were saying, those protests that were blocking stuff, horrible, they should all be executed. You remember. Now it's all about freedom. And, my mind goes, and this is what I responded to most people. I thought it was about the vaccine mandate. How did it morph into this illegitimate right-wing spawn? And I'll tell you how. Money. I'll tell you how, organized right-wing, radical, crazy groups like we have here, and lots of them. And of course, money from here. Pushing their agenda. They don't care about those truckers. They don't care anything about them. What they care about is tearing down government. They care about dividing people. And, I had one guy email me going, it's all a failure. Everything's a failure. He actually said, we're the only country in the world that did lockdowns and we failed at it. And I don't know where you go with that level of stupid. I'm struggling with that. And if anyone's got any ideas, I'd love to hear it. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Because I'm struggling with that level of, did you not pay attention? The entire globe was shut down for a period of time. And did you not pay attention to when that happened? Of course not, because the number one talking point in every email that I got is everything is Joe Biden's fault. Everything. Everything that's been done, Joe Biden's fault. Everything. Joe Biden's fault. From the lockdowns to the mask requirements to, us not finding out where the virus actually came from, just a whole litany of, to inflation, to the supply chain, bottlenecks, all of this stuff, all Joe Biden's fault. And, that's the simplistic kind of thinking that you get from some people. And understand, the former guy is the one who dropped the ball right from the start. The former guy is the one who did the lockdowns. You're kind of hoping you remember that. And a number of states' governors did too. So to say it's all Joe Biden's fault is just dishonest. But the threads that were in there, and again, everything that happened last year was all Joe's making. Everything. It's all his fault. Never mind, like I said, the former guy mishandled everything. And did the CDC make mistakes? Absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. And we should be looking at that. But in the science world, trial and error is something that you do. The best information we had is the direction they went. Did they drop the ball from the beginning and say, and for whatever reason, no, we don't need masks? Yeah, that was stupid. Everybody admits that. But you listen to the right in these talking points that have come out. And it's all of this was a nefarious plot to take away your freedom. And again, it's to get your guttural mind thinking that you're constantly under attack from every direction. This is the only level these folks can play on, because policy-wise, they've got nothing. They're not going to help make anyone's life better. They're not going to help make our society any better. It's about fearing you into voting for them because, oh my gosh, someone's going to take my freedom. Which, sorry, not happening. And understand, over the next couple of weeks, months, as we move through the next phase of coming out of the pandemic, because as Anthony Fauci said, the full-blown pandemic phase we're exiting out of that. We're hopefully getting out of that, and that's a good thing, especially as states are doing away with this. But to these folks who reached out, masks did nothing and lockdowns were tyrannical. And to say that masks do nothing is, again, one of those political things that it depends on where your minds are, what information you're looking for, because there are studies out there that say, yeah, so masks work, especially the good ones. Grabbing a piece of cloth and putting a piece of cloth over your face, probably not such a great protector. And there are studies out there that say, no, it's worthless. But interestingly enough, it comes down to which side of the issue do you fall on? Where's your ideology? Where's your position? Because we can find studies to confirm any idiocy these days. Because there's always somebody out there with the sole purpose of starting from the end and working their way backward. Which is what a lot of these anti-maskers do. A lot of these anti-vaxxers do. And the reality is are masks the end-all, be-all, savior? No. And it never was supposed to be. It was never claimed to be. And this is the thing that I find most interesting about my right-wing extremist friends, my black and white thinker friends. There are no absolutes in this. This is not an if-then situation. This is if and then and then and then. We do what we can. Masks drop down the number of particulates in the air. Maybe we breathe less of it in. Maybe it spreads less quickly. Is it a nuisance? Yeah, absolutely. But does it work? Yeah, well, according to the Mayo Clinic, yeah. Helps cut down on the particles in the air. Helps make sure that it's along with vaccines and along with social distancing and along with other things, washing your hands, doing all that stuff, the stuff we knew at the beginning, the common sense stuff, it works. It's part of the plan. Now, what happens when you got a bunch of nitwits who go, no, we're not going to do that. I have the right to do whatever I want. And remember those idiots at the beginning who were going into supermarkets and licking fruit? You remember those people, the people who were licking the handles of the doors at the freezer section? Do you remember those people? Do you remember those lunatics? This is what we have to deal with as a society. The people who, no matter what common sense says, they're going to do the exact opposite. And then they've got an entire industry goading them along. Yeah, go on. It's all a hoax. Yeah, go out there and lick that fruit in those handles. Go out and breathe on someone in an airplane. Because it's your right. It's your freedom. And you go, what about my rights? Look, I wear a mask out of respect for others. I'm vaccinated. I'm boosted. I'm in good shape. Think I'm not going to have too much of a problem if in the event that I get it. And the data bears that out. If you're vaccinated, you're boosted, you're probably going to be okay. Might get sick, might not feel great for a couple of days, but ultimately probably not going to be on a ventilator and dying. And I think we just lived through part of that. So there's part of me that goes, maybe as we tap down on some of the divisiveness, get away from the politics of this, people will then go, wait a second, since it's no longer a political statement, since no longer it's a violation of my ideology to protect myself, maybe, just maybe, they'll go and get the vaccine. And, it's crazy that we're in this place, but there's a whole group of people out there who are cheerleading the dim forward. And every one of these emails I got, it was all a hoax. It's all a hoax. And now they're pointing to the Johns Hopkins study we talked about last week. Now understand, that Johns Hopkins study was the economics department study, not the healthcare side. Now these people are saying, well, the doctors at Johns Hopkins. No. These were economists who were looking at political economy situations. This was not healthcare. But that doesn't matter because facts don't matter. It says it's bad, so it's automatically bad. And this is kind of the world we're in. But it gets worse. Outside of it's all Joe Biden's fault, outside of it's all just a big hoax, outside of none of the things that we did, even though the rest of the world was doing it too, none of that worked. Outside of those three main talking points, the big one of, we're going to make you pay. We're not going to forget that you promoted wearing masks and you promoted washing people's hands and you promoted people getting vaccines that saved their lives. And vaccines do work. One of the things I do give Trump credit for, he did allocate the money so that corporate America could go out there and get us a vaccine that they can profit from. I would argue that we should be, negotiating for drug prices, but hey, we're Americans. And the very people who say that vaccines don't work and then yell at how bad we're being gouged by the pharmaceutical industry are the very people who are out there saying, well, no, we're Americans. We shouldn't have to negotiate for drug prices. We should pay full price, damn it. Yeah, it's them. But the fourth point, and the most dangerous, is we're going to make you pay. If I see you with a mask, I'm going to mock and harass you. If I see a restaurant that's asking their patrons to wear a mask, or a business to ask their patrons to wear a mask, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to raise Cain. I'm not taking this anymore. I'm going to go and speak my mind. And look, these again are the people who know the least about these topics, but yet are the loudest and the most dangerous. These are the ones who go into a Dollar General store and when asked to wear a mask, come back and shoot the security guard in the head. These are the people who spit in the cashier's face at the grocery store because they're saying, hey, maybe wear the mask like everybody else. I know. Sheep. No. Decent. What happened to common decency? What happened to humanity? It's like these people never had parents, or at least parents who were worth anything. I still think of my mother, and if I was disrespectful to someone, there was a slap upside the back of the head coming. There's a lot of slaps upside the back of the head that should be coming. Now, outside of the individual, the crazy people out on the streets, we're going to have the legislative part of this. And as we speak, there are legislators across the country who are looking for ways to punish people. And one of those is in Florida, of course. State Representative Randy Fine, and Randy, this ain't fine. He wants to strip $200 million from about a dozen counties where those school boards had the audacity to want to protect the children under their care by enforcing mask mandates. Now, the governor there said, no, you can't do it. We're going to, no. And these counties, they have the audacity to say, you know what, we should have the local autonomy. Remember the Republican Party who feared big government? Remember the Republican Party who said, local good, big government bad? Remember that? Yeah, that doesn't exist. Never really did. That was all just a gimmick, a good Madison Avenue PR scheme. These are authoritarians from the top. But here, this moment, it's about punishing. They're going to take $200 million from these counties because that's going to help their education budgets. And as I said, it's going back to this punishment now. We're never going to let you forget that we were right and you were wrong, even though they're wrong. Even though lives were saved. Even though we could have had a much, much worse situation. Because understand from the beginning, and my point from the very start was about flattening the curve and not overblowing our healthcare system. If we did that, and look, we came close in a lot of instances. If we were to do that, people would have died from a whole bunch of other things. And now you got these people saying, "Oh, lockdowns were horrible, and this was bad." Well, we didn't blow out our healthcare system completely. And yeah, people did die of other things. And yeah, there were negative things that came out of this. And this is where the Johns Hopkins Economic Department, their study is something to look at in the future when talking about political economy, when talking about how to craft policy. But to say it was all a hoax and it was all ridiculous and it was all bad, I'm sorry. You lost me. You lost me completely. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
It doesn't happen like we think it does. No one rolls the tanks. No armies meet in pitched battle. It happens quietly, little by little. And because so many think it can't happen, it does happen. Little by little, the rules change. It doesn't seem shocking or sudden. And that's the point. Fewer places to vote, longer lines. Don't worry, they say. We're just improving the system. They hope we won't notice the rules are changing because they lost the last election. They hope we just won't care enough to stop them. They believe they can take America away from us, and we won't even notice. We know who they are. We know what they want. The question is, who are we? Do we let them get away with it, or do we fight? Democracy is on the ballot. Vote while your vote still counts. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So like I said, it's all about freedom. It used to be about liberty. And if you've listened to this program long enough, for the longest time, I've been talking about the Lochner era. Taking us back 100 years to labor conditions that were deplorable. If you were willing and desperate enough to work for poverty wages in horrible conditions, that was your choice. It was your liberty. And they started using freedom instead of liberty. So this whole freedom concept, not surprising to get tacked on to the truckers thing up north and, well, the right wing who seems to know nothing about it. It seems to be their talking point. While they're talking about freedom, they're trying to, shut people up everywhere else, which I find kind of interesting. And here to share some thoughts on the topic of freedom and our crazy right-wing friends. I've asked Maya May to come talk with us. She's the co-host of We're Speaking over at the Lincoln Project TV network there. Maya, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me, Rick.
So freedom, when you think freedom, where's your mind go? Freedom.
Well, because every time I hear freedom, I'm like, freedom to do what? Like, what have we really been doing with our freedom anyway? Like, have we been doing much with it in the past years?
Well, I would like to believe that I have a little bit, but you're right. What is freedom and what more do you want? And look, I listen to my right-wing friends, and it's this idea that they can do whatever to whomever, however, wherever, whenever, that it's all about them. And this is a very selfish ideology, and it goes back to the Reagan era of, we're all individuals and hooray for me, and the one with the most toys when dies wins, greed is good. It goes back to that era, so I'm not surprised we're where we are.
Well, and I've been reading more this year because I've had some time to sit down and read. And I'm reading a book about the difference between our society and other societies. Like in America, we're very individualistic. It's about the individual and not necessarily about community. And I heard you, speaking earlier about that, where it's like, we're supposed to be working together towards the common good. That's why we wear the mask. It's decency. It's common decency. And we've completely lost that. It's like, no, but I don't want to wear a mask. And so what we basically have right now is, a bunch of us throwing temper tantrums. Like we have grown people acting like 2-year-olds all over the place. And it's interesting because rather than our leaders trying to bring people together, they're just kind of stoking the flames of that. And so it's like, where are we headed as a country if we can't even agree on common good when it comes to our public health? It's not like the people who have been dying aren't actually dying. Like there's legitimate visceral death. We're seeing, healthcare workers getting burnt out, not to mention all of the effects of long-term COVID that we're hearing about as well. So all of this is very real, and yet we're fighting against kind of these facts that aren't real.
It's real to you. It's real to me. It's real to us. It's real to the families who are affected. It's not real to them because they're used to alternative facts. They're used to living in an alternative reality that, people don't really die from COVID, Maya. They die from something else, and COVID was just there. So COVID doesn't kill anyone. It's just, I love the logic because then it gives you the ability to wipe everything else away. Because, it was something else. It wasn't COVID. Because, a guy driving a truck is now a mortician. A guy driving the truck is now an epidemiologist and a virologist all in one because they heard it on the radio.
Yes, they did their research. They grabbed that microscope. I actually have my daughter's microscope in my house, and I've been doing my own research this entire time. And I can concur that COVID is real. So there you go.
Wouldn't you really, honestly and truthfully, wouldn't you like to see some of these people's reading lists when they say, I've still got to do my research? Wouldn't you really like to see what it is they're reading?
I truly, truly would, and I'm guessing it's what they're clicking. More importantly, it's something that could be put up overnight, and I think that's the problem with a lot of the information out there. Is it's hard to distinguish what's been written on a blog by a 16-year-old in a basement somewhere while he's playing video games, trying to have fun, versus actual legitimate information. Media literacy has not been taught in a long while, and I think now we're seeing the effects of that.
Yeah, I'm going to steal Trey Crowder, a friend of the show, Trey Crowder's line that doing your research isn't watching YouTube videos while on the can.
No, it's a kind of research, I suppose,
But here, the thing that gets me is while we're talking about freedom. And look, we all believe in freedom. We all believe that we should have the right to speak our minds, that we have freedom of speech. I think you and I would agree that there are limits to that. You have the right to say and do whatever you want until it harms me. I think, as Justice Black said, you have the right to flail your fists until they touch the tip of my nose. I think we would all agree on that. But yet now I'm looking around at the punishment part of this. And as I said at the beginning, what's frightening to me is that now the radical right is these folks who terrorized our country on January 6th and their ilk are now talking about punishing us in the aftermath as we come out of the pandemic. and they're going to do it in various ways, either in stores or in person or legislatively. And I look at this group, Pen America, who's been tracking these educational gag orders, and to me, this is a big part of this. And this is, kind of like a triple threat, if you will, because one, you get to go after and harass people that you didn't like teachers. Two, you get to destroy public education, so you can privatize that. And then three, oh boy, we can really make people angry and cause more division. So it seems like, the triple hat of horrible.
Yeah, it truly it is. And it's things that, I keep going back to the fact that if you were to go up to somebody 5 years ago and say, hey, by the way, in 2022, they're going to be talking about putting cameras in classrooms and tracking what teachers are saying and creating bills to ban what people are reading, you would say, no, that's impossible. This is America. We believe in freedom. Like that would be what you'd think we'd say. And so to me, what's deeply, deeply concerning is that we're acting as if we're not all in the same boat, and you've got half the country poking holes like in this boat, and so we're sinking. And I'm wondering when the sanity is going to come back. And I see, I talk to Gen Z a lot, and they see right through it. They're so savvy. They watch what's happening. They don't like to be told what to do or what not to read more than anyone else. And they've been going through it. They're the ones who've truly, truly been suffering in the last couple of years, not being able to have the kind of experiences in the classroom that they were having.
Right.
And so on top of it, the adults are acting crazy.
Yeah, no, look, I'm hopeful. The only thing that gives me hope is that the younger generation does get it, and the hope is that they show up come election time to vote. Because historically, young people do not vote. As much as we want to say, oh, they're the future and all that, they're not the now. They're not the now in showing up to vote. And they gotta, if you want me to give you credit for being savvy and smart, that's follow through. That gets my attention.
So historically, they didn't show up to vote, but historically, we didn't have reality show people as presidents either. And so times are changing, Rick, and both in the midterms as well as in 2020, they actually came out in numbers that were on par with older generations. So they are truly understanding what's at stake. And a lot of us, we think they're on TikTok just, doing choreographed dances and things, but no, they're informed. They're so much more informed than we even give them credit for. My daughter's 14. She gets annoyed with me because of the stuff that I don't know. She's like, what do you mean you didn't know that? How did you not know this? And I'm like, I don't watch 30-second videos on TikTok all day long. That's why I don't know.
I have a job.
Yes, exactly.
No, and look, I'm hoping that's the reality. I'm hoping they get out the vote and there's some hope for the future. But I'm watching what's going on right now. And as we've been talking about, these educational gag orders kind of have me freaked out because, this, like the one in Oklahoma is probably the most, Oklahoma, Utah, these are the most crazy. The one in Oklahoma says that if you do anything that is against my sincerely held belief, that I can then sue the teacher, not the school, not the teachers union, not the county, not the city, the individual teacher for $10,000 per incident per person. So if you're in a classroom, an overcrowded classroom with 50 kids in it, and a teacher says something that all of the parents go, well, we're offended, and hey, I can make 10 grand out of it, she's going to leave teaching or he's going to leave teaching in a heartbeat.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like really right now is when we're going to decide to go after teachers, when we're going to punish teachers after everything that they've been through. And once again, it's like what we were seeing in Texas. It's like where you're weaponizing citizens against each other, right? And this is all, again, like we know it's to stoke fear. It's to try to create disorder so that, the far right can come in and say, only we can fix it. We're going to bring order to all of this chaos. So they're creating chaos on purpose.
Absolutely. In fact, I just talked about this yesterday. I was driving in the car, and on the radio comes one of those breaking news, big news. Pennsylvania's running out of teachers. How are our children get teachers in the classroom? Solutions at 5. And they're all the same bad ideas that have been laying around in these think tanks for years, because ultimately, and maybe you'll agree with me, maybe you won't, I see this as a well-funded, well-organized campaign to destroy public education as its end game, But
Oh,
for
yes.
right now, it's about tearing us apart. And the sad reality is, you said we're divided in half. I don't think we are. I think this is, I mean, a minority of people who are well funded that we've given way too much money to, who are just out to cause trouble and using the dim to do it.
I do think you're right about that, both about the end game and the numbers. I like your numbers, they're more hopeful than mine. But I do think this idea that the end game is to destroy public education by first undermining and destroying our faith in it is definitely happening because, you know, teachers already don't get paid enough, right?
No,
And they're
look,
already having,
you wouldn't get me to be a teacher. They don't
yeah.
get paid enough. They don't get respect. Then they got to put up with oversized classrooms. And look, I grew up in an era where you talk back to a teacher, you got slapped. You can't.
So me too. I went to Catholic school actually, and the nuns beat me all throughout kindergarten, first and second grade until my parents were like, "Okay, that's enough beatings for our child now.
See,
Let's take her out."
we absolutely. My mother was left-handed, taught me to write left-handed. I went to Catholic school. They beat that right out of me. Now I can't write with either hand. And I say this all the time. And don't. If I knew where Sister Mary St. Leo was buried, I would dig her up so I could kill her again. That's how horrible that woman was to me.
I love that we remember our nuns because for me it was Sister Mary Paschal and Sister Mary Maurice. Those were the ones that beat me the most. So.
And it could have been any Catholic school. Our Lady of Great Perpetual Motion, Our Lady of Great Pain and Misery, all of that. We went to the same place, so I'm right there with you. You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Maya May. She's the co-host of We're Speaking over at Lincoln Project TV. You can check out their stuff at lincolnproject.us. We'll get links out on social media how you can do that. So the question then becomes, how do we take this moment? Because there are pockets of organizing going on. I just saw a story today that in blue areas, suburban moms are fighting back against this stuff, and you go, oh boy, that's great. The problem is there isn't billionaire money behind that. Where's the path forward?
I was thinking about this the other day. It feels like, how they say, like, if there is some sort of emergency that you're out in public and you want help, you shouldn't just say somebody call 911. You have to actually point to somebody and say, you call 911. I feel like that's what's happening right now. I feel like all of the billionaires on the left and the progressives are all kind of like, okay, well, we're just waiting for somebody to do something, to get involved, etc. And I think it's at this point, all of us, it has to be a grassroots effort, right? And so groups like these suburban moms, I think they're called Red Wine and Blue. They drink and work together to create better communities for their
and
kids.
What's wrong with that?
Yes, exactly. I think it's amazing. But groups like that have to be active and reach out and seek that funding with clear plans to put in place. And because we're seeing it on the right, obviously, between the stuff that Turning Point is doing with like the professor watch list. I don't know if you've seen this on their website. It is absolutely mind-boggling to me. It's got a whole field where you can fill out information and report on a teacher. And so they've got millions of dollars in resources to help build their end of things. And it's like, okay, we need the equivalent, the opposite, really, equivalent on the other end in order to get out of this, really, truly.
You need to build the infrastructure that the right has built masterfully. Look, I do give credit where credit is due. You look at what the radical right has done. They've built a think tank network all across this country, the State Policy Network. Every state has at least one bad idea machine. Some have two.
Right.
They have the Federalist Society, the American Legislative Exchange Council. They've got the county level ones. They've drilled down into school boards now because they've built they've built their infrastructure. And look, all that stuff that went on in Virginia, and you know this as well as anyone, all that stuff was manufactured. They just scared white suburban women to go, oh my God, they're going to teach them about some theory, and we know it's critical. And then they threw the word race in there, and oh my God, hair on fire. People at the school boards losing their minds.
Right. And now look and see where it's gotten them, because now they have a governor who clearly is not prepared to lead his state. And so we're already seeing, blowback from that. But I think at the end of the day, like, people have to realize that if they do not get engaged right now, and especially at the local level, Because most people aren't used to having to say, hey, we're going to get organized and go to school board meetings. That is not what your average citizen is doing. But democracy doesn't work unless we actually make it work. And I think what we're seeing is the long-term effects of the lack of civic engagement.
Yep.
Everybody, it's like, it's somebody else's thing to do. It's somebody else. Like, I see so many people who say they're apolitical, and I'm like, just because you choose to not participate in politics doesn't mean the laws of the nation cease to apply to you. It's not like suddenly you cease to exist. And so this idea that you're apolitical, like, no, that you can't be that.
No, I'm with you. So last question I've got for you: the way forward in this, do you, is arguably motivating people, but I think Democrats have to act a little urgent. I don't see the kind of hair on fire that you would expect in the moment that I think we would agree we're in difficult times. Do you believe in democracy or don't you? Do you believe in the rule of law or don't you? Do you believe that we should have public education or don't you? These are very clear, cut and dry questions that, I keep having people go, Democrats and Republicans, they're all the same. No, they're not all the same.
Mm-hmm. I think what's happening truly on the Democratic side is that there is a failure to understand how truly mission-driven and evil the right can be. I think everybody has this idea that most people have a sense of morality, and so they can't put themselves in that mindset because it doesn't occur to them that people truly do think like that. And so you have the right that's very mission driven, very organized, well funded. A lot of this has to do with as well as like the white nationalism that has to do with white Christian nationalism.
Yep.
And so you have people on the left, the Democrats, who don't fully understand that, or we also have to act like we're on a mission.
There you go. We absolutely do. Maya, I appreciate the time. Great stuff. I look forward to having you back again real soon.
All right. Thanks, Rick.
Good stuff. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
I've been driving buses for 5 years, and my day-to-day routine is I wake up a little earlier than most people. I get on a bus, I go out, I pick up some students and make sure they get to school nice and safe. Here in Fairbanks, Alaska, that can be a challenge because of the winter weather and the icy roads. But I love the job. So the Teamsters are great. They provide us a lot of protections. They've always taken care of their people, made sure that our jobs were secure. We didn't have to worry about whether or not we'd have a job from day to day.
And that's amazing because before we'd be working 4, 6, 8 hours a day and only earning minimum wage was real difficult to make a living. And then the Teamsters pushed a lot so we make something we can live off of and not have to have a second job. What absolutely gives me peace of mind, the union membership allows me to focus on this job without having to worry about whether or not my family is going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Case, and I'm proud to be Teamsters Local 959.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Oh, freedom. Yep, freedom. And I can't get my head off the topic, as we were talking about in the last segment. The fact that the very people who were literally willing to overthrow our government, violent insurrection to stop a peaceful transfer of power, they're the ones lecturing us about freedom. What kind of a rabbit hole did we fall down? Crazy time. But here to share some thoughts and maybe get some ideas out of, I've asked our good friend Jared Yates Sexton to come talk with us. Jared is a political analyst, host of the Muckrake podcast, also author of the fabulous book American Rule: How a Nation Conquered the World but Failed Its People. Jared, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, I'm confused. Are you talking about legitimate political discourse?
Yes. And not the kind with the flag stabbing police officers and defecating on floors.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're both on the same page here. I didn't want to get on here with some fake news. I thought we were talking about legitimate political discourse.
Let's start there. The legitimate political discourse. What kind of Orwellian BS is that?
Can you imagine being in that room? Can you imagine how many political operatives it took to piece that together? Those three ridiculous words. It's incredible, isn't it? And to bring that forward and try and peddle that. I'm sorry, but when Mitch McConnell like blanches away from it in horror, you know that you've gone wrong somewhere.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I talked about this yesterday. I don't believe a word that comes out of Mitch's mouth. I'd believe more if it came out of the other orifice. 'Cause that's probably truer. But he's looking at the political calculus, and the political calculus is this guy's guilty. There's going to be a lot of heads rolling, and he doesn't want his being one of them.
Yeah, and what else is happening with Mitch McConnell is, it's the same thing that John Boehner and Paul Ryan looked at as well, which is the dog got off the leash, and they're looking around at the Trumpist, authoritarian, anti-democratic movement, and the Republican Party's terrified of these people. They really, truly are.
They
want to use them, and they're great attack dogs, but there is a movement that has taken place at this point that Mitch McConnell even realizes that he's lost control of, and he's lost momentum within the Republican Party, which should tell everyone at home just how bad this situation is.
Yeah, I mean, when you've got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, in your state, running around, threatening gazpacho, that just makes me go, I want her. I think the Democrats made a huge mistake throwing her off the education committee, because that would have been a priceless moment. Gazpacho? What? We having lunch? What are you talking about?
I got to be honest. The mistake was throwing her off the education committee because she needed it. I thought maybe she could have got some remedial work there. I got to tell you, she is not the sharpest cookie in the shed. And this whole situation, I mean, and this as well as I do, this new iteration of post-Trump Republicans, they are grifters and they're dangerous. They have no actual ideology. They have no actual understanding of anything, but they all want to be reality TV stars. They're all competing to be on OANN's, name the next demagogue. I mean, it has pretty much gone completely off the rails. And I mean, to simply listen to her on any given day, it would be funny if it wasn't just absolutely so horrific.
I mean, terrifying that this woman is sitting in Congress. Now, granted, she's not on a committee, and I think she should be, and I took a lot of heat for it. But I think, if you're on the education committee and you go, we need more education funding, Exhibit A, gazpacho. All you got to say is gazpacho.
No, I got to say with Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think we've all worked with people in the past who, they sort of incompetence their way out of their responsibilities, and that's sort of what's happened here. I mean, she basically exists now to roll out these videos, her and Matt Gaetz, who how he's not in jail yet, I still don't know, but they basically are just walking around creating viral videos on both sides of it. I mean, it's a national embarrassment.
And we're paying for it. And that's the weird part about it. I want to get your thoughts about the stories coming out of Mar-a-Lago, as evidently Trump decided there were 15 boxes that he thought should have been his, probably more. Now we're finding out that some of that was classified information. And this is a guy who ran on her emails. You may remember something about emails, maybe a little something. I'm not quite sure if you remember, but there was something about emails and how, national security was at risk and we should be locking her up. And yet we find that, he's got all this stuff, love letters to all kinds of stuff that you go, what? Any accountability here? Do you see anything happening with this?
Rick, we're about 2 days from finding out he took the silverware. I mean, that's really where this thing is going. And honestly, none of this is shocking. I mean, he had just taken the oath of office and he was starting to give out classified material to people who told him they liked his tie. I mean, we're literally looking at a total criminal. And this is a country that survived Richard Milhouse Nixon. And all of a sudden, we're looking at this guy who was taking U-Hauls worth of classified material out of the White House. And you're exactly right by pointing out the hypocrisy of this. And none of it's real. None of it is principled. None of the things that they said about emails or servers or whatever ever actually meant anything. I mean, these are petty criminals. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who should spend some time in a county jail, not to mention a federal pen.
I like that. But I asked the question, did he take the hand towels and the soap? You went right for the silverware. So, he probably got both for all we know. Because evidently he's not doing well. Evidently businesses are way down because people are running. And that's what happens when you try and shake them down for 4 years.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, and it couldn't happen to a worse fella. I mean, his control over the Republican Party is even slipping right now, and they're looking at a newer model down there in Florida. He's not even the king of Mar-a-Lago anymore at this point. I mean, everything at this juncture is just looking worse and worse for him. But at the same time, they can't leave him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just it. And speaking of Nixon, it's the same thing. You had people who stayed with him long after 1972, and Trump's going to be the exact same way. People are going to go down with this guy, but it's just getting more pathetic and even more dangerous by the day.
No, that's the frightening part of all this. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Jared Yates Sexton. Jared's a political analyst, host of the Muckrake podcast. Make sure you find his podcast wherever you get podcasts. Also, he is the author of American Rule, How a Nation Conquered the World but Failed Its People. And look, we're failing our people every day by the fact that we can't get policy moved through that's going to make people's lives better. And I look at what's going on with this trucker thing up in Canada. I view this as the moneyed interests really pushing something to keep people at each other's throat, keep chaos in the mainstream media, keep us thinking that this is an actual large movement when it's not the majority. 80-90% of the people in Ottawa are vaccinated. They don't want those people there. And you go, this is one of those constructs to keep us pitted against one another so we don't demand better. At least that's my thought. I'm curious yours.
No, you've got this dead on. The same people who pay incredible amounts of money to keep any legislation from passing through Congress that helps anybody except for themselves. These are the same people who paid for January 6th to happen, which, by the way, was another capital city that was overrun by people absolutely submerged and drowning in conspiracy theories. This thing that's happening in Canada is more or less a pilot project to see how you can bring a capital city to its knees. And one of the things that I've been keeping a watch out for over the past couple of weeks as this has happened is there's been a lot of talk of trying to replicate this within the United States of America. I mean, this is moneyed interest, dark money, corporate billionaire libertarian donors who are carrying these things out, who have absolutely paralyzed not only our government, but now they're going after the capitals. I mean, it's really insidious stuff.
No, and this is all stuff that in their little think tanks that they've had around for years, they've gamed out. They've always had a doomsday scenario, and they're getting to play the moves on the chessboard. And as you're talking about this happening here, there's talk of it starting on Super Bowl Sunday. I guess the president was briefed about it today. And the weird thing is that what I'm told is the rally in Canada is about a vaccine mandate for truckers that they're supposedly against, yet all these other issues have popped up. Yet here in the U.S., truckers are exempt from the vaccine mandate. So it's not the same thing, and it's what you're saying. It's all about all about opportunism and all about causing the chaos that the wealth class in this country desperately needs to keep we the people in line.
Yeah, and if you actually look at how this always happens, I mean, you don't have to look much further than the Tea Party. What these billionaire right-wing donors want to do is they want to create astroturfed, quote-unquote, grassroots operations, right? They want to radicalize people through conspiracy theories and basically take the anger that belongs to them and then divert it to vulnerable populations and their political enemies. And they create these astroturfed fake movements that change the discourse and also make it seem as if there's some sort of a popular directive. But that's not what this is at all. It's actually a really insidious psychological operation. And this is what they do. This is what they do with their billions of dollars. They create these fake movements and they put people in a lot of danger.
No, and that's the thing. There's a lot of danger here. I mean, we're in a moment that is kind of frightening because I don't see. I think one of the biggest failures that Joe Biden has had thus far in his presidency is he still looks at Mitch McConnell and the Republicans in the Senate as people who care about this country. I think he still looks at the Republican Party as the Republican Party of 10 or 15 or 20 years ago and not what they've morphed into. And I think that is a miscalculation from the beginning, because they're going to do nothing to help move this country forward. If anything, they're going to continue to tear us down. And I look at Ted Cruz, who somehow Ted Cruz thinks he should be advising the people in the truckers in Canada to do more. And you go, wait a second, didn't you flee your state when they were in need? Why are you causing trouble somewhere else? Go back to Cancun. I
was gonna say he probably wants to help out in Canada because that's his home. I mean, to be honest, I mean, this whole thing, and I got to tell you that where my alarms went off with Joe Biden's candidacy was when he said, you know, I'll get elected and then they'll wake up and everything will change. And I understand where it came from, but there are so many politicians, Democrats and Republicans alike, who think that this is politics as usual.
Yep.
And that's not what this is. I mean, you know, you look at something like this, quote unquote, CRT conspiracy craze. That's about going in and literally eradicating public education. That's about going in and just privatizing this thing. Like you want to talk about chess, Rick? We're talking about a near checkmate situation. And that's why people need to get serious about this. They should have been serious years ago.
Right.
They are years behind, billions of dollars behind. And it's time to get serious about this entire situation and figure out some solutions.
And this is where my question was going to go. You know, I don't see the kind of urgency that I feel in this moment. I don't see the kind of urgency that I think we should be under with a Democratic Party who seems kind of just, you know, kind of, you know, not as urgent as I would like to be. I think the rule of law is under attack. I think democracy itself is under attack, and I don't see the urgency.
Well, you know, let's speak a little bit of hard truth. The Democratic Party decades ago completely betrayed their allies in the labor movement. They betrayed the vulnerable communities that they were representing, and they went in full bore with neoliberalism. And it's really hard to realize that this moment, and I'm not just talking about Trumpism, I'm talking about authoritarianism. I'm talking about this new national conservative movement that is coalescing behind what we used to call Trumpism. What gave birth to that was neoliberalism.
Correct.
And what needs to happen right now is some people need to take a real hard, long look in the mirror and realize that they made some mistakes and that they need to make good on some broken promises.
No, and that starts with, you know, and I think Biden's trying in a little way to do some of this. I mean, the fact that he's doing a lot to reshore manufacturing. We're building a lot of factories supposedly coming up very soon. There's some of that stuff reinvesting in the country and the infrastructure bill. I think some of that a little bit is moving us, but not far enough and not fast enough, in my opinion.
Well, and here's the thing about it. You can't go anywhere until you start telling people what's actually happening. Like, that's the problem with Biden and the Democrats, is they're not able to explain why this is happening, because in order to do it, you have to admit some fault.
Right.
You have to start calling it the authoritarianism that it is. And quite frankly, you have to move away from neoliberalism and austerity politics. And in order to do that, it takes a major sea change, but they're going to have to do it. Otherwise, they're going to be wiped out. They're going to lose every possible election that is on the board unless they start actually calling this what it is and moving in some sort of a new direction.
Is that possible? I mean, honestly, I mean, you look at the fact that you've got, you know, probably 5, 6, maybe more Democratic senators who are, you know, they're right there. Aren't you just sending them to the, you know, to the sidelines and then ending up losing the Senate?
I got to be honest with you, Rick. I don't think that the answer revolves around national politics. I really, truly don't. I think it's grassroots stuff. I think it's labor movements. I think it's solidarity at a local level. We got to get some people in politics who aren't going to betray other people. They're not going to sell them out. They're not going to go in and take the corporate profits. They're going to go in to take out Citizens United. They're going to go in to take on corruption. Those are the only answers at this point. I don't think national politics is where to look.
No, but, you know, sadly, what a lot of institutions, labor, the Democratic Party, a number of places, they want the silver bullet. A couple of months before election time, they ramp up, and then they disband afterwards. Whereas the Republicans, it's 24/7, 365, year after year after year, they're building and building and building, and created an incredible messaging machine. They've got grassroots, they've got digital that they've done so much on. There's a lot of catch up here.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, one of the worst things about the Democratic Party is that they basically told everybody, worry about voting every 2 years and you've done your job. But that's not how democracy works. Democracy is a full-time job that you got to do on top of your full-time job, probably your 2 full-time jobs at this point.
Yeah.
You have to go out, you have to organize, you have to fight for these things. You got to run for your school board. You got to fight these QAnon freaks who are taking over your school boards. I mean, all of this stuff, it's going to take so much work, so much elbow grease. And you're right, we have so much time to make up for, but I still have hope that we can do it.
I'm there, right there with you. Jared, I appreciate the time as always. Great stuff. I love the podcast. I hope folks will take a look at the Muckrake podcast. Also grab the book, the American Rule, How a Nation Conquered the World But Failed Its People, written by Jared Yates Sexton. Jared, as always, great stuff, my friend.
Thanks, buddy.
And look, he's spot on. And, it takes us. And I've been saying this for years. We're the reason we're in this position because we voted for these people. We continually bought the big lies. We continually bought the fantasy that if we just give corporate America and the billionaires enough, somehow it'll trickle down on the rest of us like rivers of gold and honey, like manna from heaven. And what's it gotten us? Well, it's gotten us, as John Edwards put it, 2 Americas. The ones who have, and then the rest of us. And what the ones who have do masterfully, they pit the rest of us against one another. That's how they win. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got a thought, question, comments? Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Back after this.